Hey guys, welcome back. In the last video, we tackled some of the animations and interactions on our Titanic homepage. Now we're going to start expanding our site and jump into the main content, talk about how to get there, and a little bit of custom JavaScript behind the scenes. Don't be afraid, it's not going to be that bad. Let's go. Alright, so we are inside of our Titanic site. We've got our button, it has all the click properties, but it doesn't go anywhere when you click it. So let's add something to change that. So with our button selected, the button element in its settings, it allows you to tell you where you want to send this link. So we can bring it to an external page, we can have someone's email open up, an attachment, but what we're going to do is link to a new page. So we don't have that page created yet, so actually let's just go over here, click this page icon. So far, the only thing we have is our home page, but if we click on this top right, create new page, let's create a new page. We'll name it main content page. This is where everything is going to live. Just click create. And we have a beautiful, just blank white background. So now if we go back to this is our page toggle, so we can always interact and figure out where we want to go from here. We'll just go back to our home page. And now with that other page created, we'll just click choose main content page. Great. But the only problem is now when we preview our site and we click the button, it works. It takes us to the main content page. But remember all those beautiful animations we did about the movement and the sunset? All that disappears. So we definitely want to linger as long as we can on the home page to complete our interaction before it takes us to our new page. Now Webflow doesn't have a direct way of delaying a page load, but there's a little trick we can do with some custom JavaScript. So because this affects not only this page, but another page on our Webflow site, we're going to go into our main site settings and head over to custom code. Inside this section, the footer code, I'm just going to paste this little snippet. And don't be overwhelmed by this. You don't have to understand exactly what it does, but if you want to copy it, the link will be in the description below on my Webflow page, so if you're following along, you can do the same thing. Alright, so in our footer code down here, we're just going to see this little chunk of JavaScript, and basically what it's saying is the set sail button, which this is targeting the specific class. So I'll go back and show you where we actually targeted that class. It's basically the button itself when we named it. That has to match. That's kind of the most essential thing. So if you're copying this, just make sure you change this chunk in red here to whatever your element you're targeting is, essentially. And this little dot in front means that it's a class element. So we are saying to, when we click our button on a click function, an event is going to occur. And instead of carrying out that event, which would take us to the main content page right away, we're going to prevent the default action of that button. And then we're going to set a timeout instead, which means we're going to delay it however much we want to delay it before the event carries out. And in this case, we're going to do 5 seconds. So the link that we're going to, we want to delay it 5 seconds before we get there, so we have a little more control. And that way we can watch our animation beautifully before we leave the main page. All right, so I'm going to save the changes. And go back to our designer here. And I'll show you really quick. So when we click on our set sail button, this section right here, we keep naming things. It's for organization, but also if you are doing custom JavaScript, keep in mind that that is the class name of the element that you're building. So if you're ever trying to target it, these names have to match up. So we have set-sail-button. It has to be verbatim as well, you guys. So now that that matches up, we can publish our site. Another quick thing, JavaScript doesn't work in the Webflow browser, even when you're in preview mode. Anything you write in JavaScript won't show up, so you have to just publish it really quick, and then you can view the live version and to see all the changes you're making there. So now, when I click the up arrow, our animation comes in, and when we click set sail, we get a nice slow fade. We see our animation, it fades to black like we said, and then opens our beautiful white page to the main content page. Not too bad. Definitely a little more appealing than just the stark jump from before. All right, now we're going to jump into our new main content page, and we're going to start building out the different elements that make up where all the fun stuff is going to live. So let's take a jump right back in here. We have our body, and we're just going to add a new section within our body here. Click section. And I'm going to set some parameters on this guy. So first we can name it hero section. And hero is just a term in web design. It's kind of that top part of a website when somebody lands there and it sees kind of the brand name, a little blurb about what they expect when they visit the site, and then some kind of call to action. We're doing something similar here. This is just going to be where the video section lives. So, and again, I'm using a section element here. So for screen readers and accessibility for Google when it's tracking your site on any sort of tracking platform, section indicates a main chunk of content, and this is a new section with specific details as opposed to what's beneath it or below it. So, like two sections there. And I'm going to make this guy have a height of 90 VH. So that's 90% of the viewport height. So that way, on whatever device the person is on, it'll be 90% of that screen size. I'm going to make the width 100%, just so it always stays 100%. And I'm going to make the position here absolute. So by doing that, it's going to stay at the very top of the document, as long as I don't give it any kind of styling or positioning at all. And it's not relative to the document flow. And what that means is, if it were relative, it acknowledges any other elements that are around it. So if I put another element above it, this would get pushed down to make room for that. If I added other things, it would just keep getting pushed down because it is relative to whatever's around it in the body. But when I make the hero section absolute, it'll stay at the very top of the document. And that's what we want, because when people come here, we want this video, which is this going to be the first thing, not going to be obstructed by anything else. So we have our hero section, and now we are going to add something inside. So with our hero section selected, we can click plus, and we're going to do a new background video. And we're going to name this guy background video. We're going to make its height 100%, so that way it takes up 100% of whatever it's inside. And as we remember, it is inside our hero section, and that has the set height of 90 VH. So now our background video will also be 90 VH. And this is just a nice way, so if we end up changing the hero section size later on to 50 VH or whatever, the video will adjust accordingly, and we don't have to keep going back and changing both at each different times. Okay, so we have our background video. I'm going to go to the settings of this video. And here we can upload the video of choice. And I have something on my desktop already ready. Let's see, here she is. All right, so it's just a trailer I found online and cut it together a little ways and made it what I want it to be. And I also took the sound out. So here's another thing, guys. With a background video, it's not the same as inserting an actual video. So with the video, there would be controllers. The user could press play, pause, and rewind, which is all helpful features. But with the background video, it's more aesthetically pleasing to not have the control panel and anything. We want it just to be kind of the background element, right? But it'll still be moving, it'll be playing. But because of this, we can't control the sound as much. So I actually have this video with no sound. And just for a little more practice, I'm going to show you how I built a custom audio controller with the sound from the video and how I still incorporated that in so they can both play together. All right, so while our video finishes transcoding here, it just takes a few minutes. What's good about Webflow is you can keep designing even though that is going on. So we're gonna go over here to our navigator again. So we have our video section coming together, but like I said, it is muted, there is no sound. So how I want to add some sound, we're gonna click on the body, we're gonna add a new element. This is going to be an HTML embed, so this guy right down here. And this is just a snippet of code. It's not something physical in your document. You're not going to see it. It's just kind of a place where your code can live if you're creating new elements, and then you can style them accordingly so they display where you want them, how you want them. But this, we are going to create a little audio element. I'm just going to copy this in here. Again, I'll leave a link below so you can copy this file. But essentially, this is a new audio element, and the source of it is hosted on my GitHub account, essentially. So that's just kind of a platform where you can upload coding and projects and things. So you can use any source you want, really, that hosts MP3 files. This is just where I'm using it. I found this to be the most effective, because a lot of other ones require you to have custom controllers, and they have to be linked to their site itself, and you're a little limited in terms of how you can design within Webflow with that. So a way that I figured it out was just having my source be a file in my GitHub account. So as long as that site is live and active and the file is still there, this can access it from anywhere, which is really great. If for some reason it's down and it can't, this is just a little piece of text saying your browser doesn't support this, or if your browser doesn't support this. All right, so we have our new audio element created. And again, this is not something physical. It's kind of just a place where the sound lives. So I'm just gonna save and close this. And it looks like our video is done as well. So when we click preview, we should see our beautiful video start to play. And there is black in the beginning of the video. That's not a mistake. Great. Beautiful. So it's playing nicely. So now let's get the rest of the sound attached to that video so we can make it really nice. All right, so if we go back into our HTML embed over here, and to see what we have coded, you can just go to the settings, open code editor. And I'm gonna paste a big chunk of some stuff beneath it. And again, don't be overwhelmed by this. It's not too scary. I'll just walk you through essentially what's going on here. So at the top, we have that audio element, right? This was just where the music was living. But down here is where we're creating something physical. So the div, you might be familiar with the div element in Webflow itself. You can add a div block. It's just the square where content lives and you can design things accordingly. We're just creating one ourselves here. And we're giving a class of audio container. And inside this div square, it's going to have 3 buttons. And the first one is going to be a mute button, and then a plus button and a minus button. So I'll just walk you through all of these things. So right here, FA volume down, this is referring to Font Awesome. This is just a little site where you can link icons. It's just little images, so it'll just be an image that represents whatever button we're making. That's just the class name for Font Awesome that they do. I'll show you how we link that in a second. And we're also giving each of these buttons a class of audio button, and that's so we can target them later when we need to add some more JavaScript. So we're also saying when somebody clicks this button, we're going to target the audio element, and that's this guy up here. You see how it has an ID of audio? That's where our sound lives. So when they click the mute button, the muted property is something that is associated with an audio element, and by putting this little exclamation, it's targeting it and saying, make it the opposite of what it is currently. So what that means is if the sound is playing, when you click this button, it'll make it not playing. And if it's not playing, when you click it, it'll turn it off, and vice versa. So that's just a little not Boolean value there in JavaScript. And then the other 2 buttons, the plus and minus, as you might understand, it'll be raising the volume and lowering the volume. So it's targeting the volume of the audio element and subtracting it by 0.2 decibels, I believe, and then adding by 0.2 decibels. So this is our little div container, and without any styling or anything, it wouldn't look too nice. So if you just scroll up here, we also have some custom styling just to target. And this is just CSS. You may not be familiar as well with this, but audio container is just targeting the div itself. So that's the container. So I just gave it some padding. It's displayed flex, so everything floats in the center of it. I gave it a set width and height. It has a background color, a little bit of curvature for the border radius. And then audio button, this is another class. And remember, we gave this class to each of the buttons, the mute, the plus, and the minus. They all have the same background color, padding, font, margin. And this transition refers to the hover. Remember before when we were doing our set sail button, if you want to add an ease in hover or a color change, you always affect the base state. So our audio button is the base state. And then we're telling it to transition into the hover with an ease of 0.2 seconds. And then, so when they hover, it's just going to change the background color a little bit, just lighten it up and show kind of some interaction there. So I'm going to save and close this. And now you'll see in this top left corner here, we have this little thing that popped up. So this is our new HTML element, right? Because it lives inside this HTML embed. And I'm actually going to put it over our video element, so that way it always stays at the top. And remember what I was saying about relative and absolute positioning? We're going to do the same thing for our HTML embed. Go to the styling. And if we change the position to absolute, bam. So now both of these elements, the video and the audio controller, don't live in the flow of the document. They're both just pushed to the top. But this guy will sit above the video, and just to make sure that always happens, I can change the Z index of our HTML element. I'm just going to make it something huge, like 100. That way if someone's scrolling around and they want to turn off the sound in some way, it'll be the first thing they can see. There's no risk of it getting blocked by another element. Z index, in case you're not familiar, is, so there's X and Y axis, and the Z is what's coming towards you or away from you. So it's like stacking in the 3D space. So if I had something else behind this video, If the video has a higher Z index, it'll appear in front of the other one. All right, so we have our audio controller. And again, JavaScript doesn't show up in this, so let's just publish this guy, and then let's check out the preview again. So we see our little button hovers, right? The color's working, the padding's working, the video comes in, but we also want those font awesome icons. Remember I mentioned those? So instead of just white circles, which are not appealing, let's add some little icons so they know what they're clicking. All right, so back in our document, I'm going to go to this page itself, and I can click the settings of the main content page. And you can also add custom JavaScript right inside this one page. And anything CSS related, which is styling, including these font awesome icons, will live in the head of that document. So I'm going to place this little piece of code. And this is something you can copy from their website itself, Font Awesome. It's just a little relationship to the style sheet for the Font Awesome so we can get our icons. And again, this is something that lives on the internet, so Webflow will always just, and this website will be able to access it, just like the audio file that lives on GitHub. All right, so that's saved. I'm gonna publish this one more time. And when I go to the live site, boom, we have little icons now. So as you see, we've got this is our mute button, this is our lower the volume, this is our raise the volume. Right now we can click on them, but they don't do anything, obviously. So the next step is going to be to add some functionality to our buttons. All right, so let's go back in here. All right, so remember what I said before about how the sound isn't something that is attached to our video? One, because we muted it and there is no sound, but also because there's no controls, but we still want the sound and the video to play when the user enters the screen, just for that kind of cinematic introduction, and it'll kind of grab the attention right away. And just a little full disclosure, guys, this isn't really the best practice for web design. A lot of people don't want sounds to play where they don't have immediate control over things, because if someone is in an office or a quiet space and they load a browser and then all of a sudden the sound starts playing, not always the best. And actually most browsers do block this from happening. So even if I did have an autoplay on this video sound, it wouldn't play. But this little workaround is a way around it. You do with that whatever you want to do. This is just a way that I was practicing to kind of bypass that to see if I could, and I could. So this is just one way that the sound will automatically play when a browser loads. So we're going to have to target our video element, and we're going to want to make sure it has an ID labeled. So in the styling, these are all of the classes, right? Things can have the same class. I can have 600 div elements on here with the same class of div number 17. But the IDs are something that only one property can have. So I can't have multiple of the same ID. So I'm just going to call this guy video, just so we can always target that one video. And then I'm going to go to the page, main content page. I'm going to add some more JavaScript in the footer tag, because this isn't CSS and styling. This will be JavaScript itself. So it's a script tag. I'm going to copy some code into here. So really quick, just walk you through what's happening here. So I defined two variables on top here. You don't have to worry about too much what all this is, but basically I'm saying target the video, which is our background video in our hero section, right? I'm calling it video. So that way it's kind of like a shortcut where I can just use the word video instead of typing out document blah, 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 blah. And I'm doing the same for the audio. And remember we created that audio element where it's pulling that audio file from the GitHub account. I'm just calling that audio. So then now moving forward, all we have to worry about is video and audio. So I'm creating a little function here, and it's my own custom function that I'm calling play audio. And whenever this function is called, it's going to target the audio element, and then it'll say play. And play is something that can attach itself to an audio element in JavaScript. So there's a few other commands you could tell it, but play is something that it recognizes. So now down here, I'm also saying our video, which is our background video, on load. So when our video element finishes loading, it's going to call that play audio function. So that way they're always played at the same time, which is great. Now, depending on your internet connection and things, there could be a second delay of sorts where it won't be perfectly in sync. Luckily, this isn't some cinematic movie we're putting into theaters. It's just our website. So I think people will survive if Rose's and Jack's lips are not perfectly in sync. It's fine. So when our video finishes loading, it's going to call the play audio function and play our audio element. All right, so I'm going to save this. And remember, we can't view JavaScript and the preview Webflow browser, so I'm just going to publish our site. And now when I go to publish or view this, got our home page here, click our button, set sail, fades. And we hear some sound. Fade. And we can mute this. Click it again. Raise the volume. Lower the volume. And there we got it. And you may have noticed that there was a harsh jump from the first page to our main content page once we click the Set Sail button. So a nice way to get around that is to add a loading screen animation. So that way we can easily transition into our next page and nothing is going to be harsh for the viewer. So stick around and we'll do that in our next video.